Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild. We're looking at how a simple, everyday, consumer-level action is fundamentally rewriting the rules of global conflict right before our eyes. We're talking about the massive shift from multi-billion-dollar hardware platforms to software-defined warfare. I want you to picture this for a second. You've got a soldier out on the front lines. They pull a standard, commercially available smartphone right out of their pocket. They open up a standard web browser, and right there on a device that's honestly no different from the one you might be using to listen to this explainer, they see the entire war. Not just a tiny fragment of it, but a completely fused, real-time picture. We're talking enemy vehicles geolocated on a live map, streaming drone feeds, and instant sensor hits. It literally shatters everything we've been taught to expect about clunky, hyper-expensive military hardware. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our 6-part roadmap to make sense of it all. First, the browser as the battlefield. Second, software-defined warfare. Third, the power of data fusion, followed by compressing the decision loop, the cloud sovereignty paradox, and finally, risks and lasting lessons. Section 1. The browser is the battlefield. To really understand the ground-level reality of modern tech on the front lines, we have to look at a system called Delta. So what is Delta? Basically, it's a live web application that serves as a common operating picture for battlefield management. In practice, that means it takes incredibly complex data, drone feeds, satellite imagery, sensor hits, and it geolocates all of it into one real-time mapped view. And you know what the most revolutionary part is? The client is just whatever hardware happens to be in a soldier's hand. There are no exotic proprietary terminals. It's just a browser. And get this, who actually built the thing is just as fascinating. It wasn't the product of some bloated, decade-long defense contract. Actually, it was built by a really unusual coalition. You have the volunteer NGO Aerorozvidka, the Ministry of Digital Transformation under Mikhailo Fedorov, and a Defense Ministry Innovation Center. This group shipped and iterated military software at a rapid, startup-style tempo. They just entirely bypassed the notoriously slow pace of traditional defense procurement. Let's move to Section 2, Software-Defined Warfare Explained. And this brilliantly illustrates the core shift we're seeing, moving the ultimate military advantage away from heavy hardware and directly into data. I mean, legacy defense IT is famously bespoke, it's hardware-locked, it's siloed by specific vendors, and it is incredibly slow to change. Delta completely flips that script. It's cloud-native, it's browser-based, it runs on regular PCs and phones, and it relies on super-fast iteration. This commodity client approach is exactly how a shared situational picture got pushed down to far more frontline troops than much richer militaries have ever managed, even with their massive budgets. But this didn't just happen overnight. If we trace the timeline, Delta's roots actually go back to a 2017 NATO initiative. The whole goal there was to break the old Soviet habit of hoarding information vertically within isolated units. Fast forward to 2022, and it's seeing broad use among frontline troops. Then, by February 2023, we saw full deployment with a massive backend shift out of the country. So it went from being this theoretical interoperability idea to a deployed reality that traditional deep-pocketed militaries are now studying. And honestly, they're studying it pretty nervously. Section 3. The power of data fusion. So how do all these raw, chaotic battlefield feeds actually become a unified view? Think of it like a giant puzzle. You've got all these different sensors out there: optical drones, satellite imagery, reports from vetted bystanders, allied intelligence, and even advanced all-weather radar like VigilSAR. But here's the secret. An optical drone that goes blind the second it hits cloud cover, or a radar that sees perfectly through the dark, they are both completely useless without a fabric that ties them together. Without it, they're just disjointed streams of noise. And that leads us to a foundational rule of modern conflict. The scarce resource and more, it isn't the sensor itself. It's the exploitation and fusion layer. Delta is that layer. It makes those totally disparate feeds mean something when put together. If you own the platform that fuses these inputs, you own the picture, and maintaining your advantage relies entirely on owning the sovereign feeds that flow into that picture. Section 4. Compressing the decision loop. Now, what's really interesting about perfectly fusing that data is how it fundamentally changes the element of time. The traditional military decision loop generally goes from observing a threat to identifying and prioritizing it, and finally to coordinating a response. Delta links reconnaissance, identification, and response into one single, rapid cycle across entirely dispersed units. It drastically compresses the decision loop. cutting down the time from seeing a threat on a screen to eliminating it in the field. To put that kind of speed into perspective, just look at this number, 1,500. During the early counteroffensive near Kyiv, Ukraine's defense ministry credited Delta with helping identify roughly 1,500 confirmed enemy targets a day. Now, we do need to objectively note that this is a self-reported, unverified wartime claim from the Ministry of Defense, but even if we just use it as a directional indicator, the sheer scale of that target processing is absolutely staggering. And that scale is exactly why Mikhailo Fedorov framed the endgame as having 10,000 drones flying continuously along the front, broadcasting the fight without interruption. But a swarm of that massive size, it's completely meaningless without a digital coordination fabric underneath it to make sense of the video feeds. That fabric, the software managing all that chaos, is the actual tangible product that Delta provides.
Section 5, the cloud sovereignty paradox.
Okay, I want you to really slow down and just sit with this next concept for a second, because it challenges literally everything we know about national security. Traditionally, a nation protects its most sensitive crown jewel data by keeping it strictly within its own physical borders, right? But in February 2023, to protect this vital command system from domestic missile strikes, Ukraine had to move Delta's cloud components outside the country. They traded physical on-soil control for actual operational survival, choosing to host it on foreign infrastructure. Because ultimately, survivability comes from not being a single co-located target. You can't bomb a data center that isn't physically located where your front line is. Distributing the backend across foreign servers makes it infinitely harder to destroy in one single strike. But this creates a very honest, very real tension between national sovereignty and system survivability. And that is a paradox every single nation building a modern defense network is going to have to weigh. Finally, Section 6. Risks and lasting lessons. Now, it is absolutely crucial that we maintain a grounded, objective view here. We can't just glorify this technology without acknowledging its massive attack surface. A networked, cloud-based system is incredibly powerful, yes, but it's also a massive, soft target. Back in December 2022, Delta was hit by an info-stealing phishing campaign. It also completely depends on connectivity, which means it is highly vulnerable to degradation from jamming and power outages. And relying on vetted bystanders, well, that opens the door to deception and data poisoning. The effectiveness reporting is opaque by necessity. Plus, ethically, the sheer speed of faster targeting carries a massive escalatory weight. The incredible capability of this software and its hazards, they travel hand in hand. So the crucial point we really need to take away is this. The platform matters less in the picture, and the picture is software. The lasting lesson of Delta is that it provides a completely new model for building defense capabilities. It treats warfare as software. It relies on open standards, rapid iteration, commodity hardware, and finding resilience through distribution rather than building thicker concrete walls. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on today. As defense establishments around the world continue pouring billions upon billions into decade-long hardware procurement programs, we really have to ask ourselves, if software now defines the war, who is actually armed for the future? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. We'll see you next time.